So close. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Strategic Planning Kickoff event, a community forum. As a means to district improvement, school districts around the country engage in a process called strategic planning to assess all areas of a school district, identify challenges and successes, and then set goals to propel the district forward and thus improve student outcomes for all. Our goal for tonight's forum is to have a discussion centered around the skills necessary for Grosse Ile graduates to be successful in their future, a future that none of us are able to predict. In fact, one of the statistics you'll likely hear tonight is that 2/3 of our current students will work in a job that does not currently exist. For that reason, we decided that our strategic planning work should begin by hosting a moderated discussion with individuals from various career fields and ask them their thoughts regarding these important issues, and then ultimately help drive the work of our strategic planning committee. Before we begin our discussion, I'd like to introduce just a few members of our Board of Education. With us tonight is our President of the Board, Dr. Dan Murphy. Vice President Suzanne Sasek. And Trustee Nadia Tanova. I would also like to recognize the members of our district leadership team tonight. Would all members of the district leadership team please stand and be recognized? Now, at this time, I would like each panelist to introduce themselves, their occupation, and include their connection with Grosse Ile. If we could do that at this time. Starting with you, Ms. Kerr.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name's Amanda Kerr. I am a nurse by background. I've been a nurse for 21 years, working in the hospital setting. I currently work in clinical operations over the site. I have 2 daughters that are in the school district. I have one in the middle school and one in the high school.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Martin Woomer. I'm the Senior Vice President of Product and Portfolio Management for a healthcare information technology company that actually serves Amanda as one of our primary customers. I spent 10 years in the military as well, and have a kindergartner and 4th grader in the school system here.
I'm Jay Frucci, community member, grew up here, graduated from Grosse Ile High School, not last year. And although I do have a daughter who will be graduating this year, and she's my 3rd graduating from Grosse Ile. I'm a tax lawyer working for Ally Bank.
Hi, I'm Laura McIntyre. I'm a high school electives teacher. I've been here since teaching at Grosse Ile High School since 1998. This is a second career for me. I was in management and food and beverage prior.
Hello, I am Kristen Seatek. I am a 2nd grade teacher here at Park Lane. I have 4 children, 3 of which are in our school district. This is my 18th year teaching, 3rd school district that I've taught in, and I also serve as a coach as well.
Hi guys, I'm Emily Schaller, graduate of Grosse Ile, year 2000. Laura Mack was one of my teachers. I graduated, I had no clue what I was going to do, and it took almost a decade to figure it out, and eventually founded my own nonprofit, the RockCF Foundation, to heighten awareness and raise funds for cystic fibrosis.
Thank you all very much for being here tonight and sharing your talents with us this evening. We sincerely appreciate it. Also here with us tonight are two of our education consultants who are assisting the district with the strategic planning process, Ms. Suzanne Klein and Ms. Kay Cornell. Thank you both, ladies, for being here. I will let them introduce themselves and share a little bit about their background in a minute. Finally, I'd also like to introduce Mr. Brian Weber, Vice President of Plant Moran Cressa, who is assisting the district with capital improvements planning and will be giving a short presentation later this evening as well. Welcome, Brian, from Plant Moran. Thanks, Brian. After tonight's discussion, the Strategic Planning Committee will meet to review data, further discuss educational and workforce trends, review all of the feedback collected from this forum, as well as all of the survey data that's being collected from our stakeholders, and then we will set goals for the district over the next 3 to 5 years. If you would like to be considered to serve on the committee, we ask that you complete a short application. We'll have the link available to you on the screen at the end of the forum, and my executive assistant, Mrs. Robin Whitaker, she has hard copies of those applications with her tonight, so you're welcome to get one of those if you'd rather. So at this time, I'm very excited to turn things over to Suzanne and Kay.
Good evening. My name is Kay Cornell, and I am one of the co-facilitators with Dr. Klein of the strategic plan. But tonight I'm wearing a different hat. Tonight I'm wearing the hat. I'm a senior consultant with Learning Forward. And Learning Forward is a national professional learning, professional development organization. We work with students, teachers, and all kinds of different educational organizations toward increased student achievement. So I'm going to talk about the future of education. I'm going to make this very short. I'm going to go through it in a very short period of time, and it will be developed at much greater length during the strategic planning process. But given the limited amount of time, you'll have a chance to ask questions afterwards or to include them in your feedback. Education has always been, I'm going to try to do this so I can see the slides. Education has always been extremely challenging. I mean, we all know that. The society has continued to change and evolve over the last 125 years when education has been for all as opposed to when it was primarily for the elite. So as we look at education today, it's incredibly complex. And because of the last 18 months, it's even more complex. The challenges that districts face and that it will impact the future of education are much greater than they've been in other years. School districts now have the challenge of health and safety in a way that they've never had before. Never have I stood in front of a group of people and seen people wearing masks. There are so many issues that districts have to be aware of. So that's a challenge. A second challenge is the dealing with children and families who are grieving. The last 18 months have brought incredible grief to a lot of people. As of 2 weeks ago, 1 in 498 people had lost someone to COVID. But the grieving is far more diverse than that. People have lost loved ones, they've lost friends, but they've also lost jobs, they've lost routines, they've lost predictability in so many aspects of their lives that really people are grieving in a way that we haven't all seen in this room in our lifetime. And so that's a challenge for the districts as they work with students and families. And finally, restructuring and structuring. It's interesting, there's a new diagram out on what students have gone through in the last few years. And I really hadn't even thought of it quite this way until I saw it in black and white. Third graders, they are the youngest to have had a normal, what we would define as a normal school experience. Kindergartners, first and second graders have not had a whole year of a normal school experience. Well, think about what that means in terms of schools and districts. We're going to have to reculture and bring these kids in and create new structures and comfortable structures. They need to see school as a safe place, as a place that's a home for them. And so that restructuring and bringing back that normalcy of a predictable school experience is one of the great challenges that districts are facing today. So next slide, please. So why plan? Oh, I have the clicker. Oh. Asked me to be responsible too. I don't know that I even need the microphone. So why plan?
You do need a microphone for live streaming.
Oh, okay, I do. Thank you. So why plan? This is what a strategic plan is all about. The future is going to happen whether we plan for it or not. But when we think about the future, it is more, the planning for this is more challenging and different than it's ever been in the past. Our need for education of students and a deep education is more important than it's ever been. There's simply not much room in our society right now for people who are uneducated. And we've learned so much from the COVID experience that the last few years have taught us that there are some lessons to be learned in how we need to educate students. If 2/3 of the jobs that they will have haven't even been created, we have no idea the world that we're sending these kids into. In the same way that probably our parents and grandparents had no idea that our world would look like it is today, that we all used MapQuest to get here today, and that we use Google every 30 minutes for something important or something unimportant. Our world is very different, and their world is going to be even more different. The future, interestingly, and maybe more than ever, partly because of technology, the future is unknowable. It's also unpredictable. Who in this room 3 years ago would have predicted COVID? Would have predicted a pandemic that will change our lives for years to come, if not forever? So some of what we need to prepare our kids for is that unpredictable, and to prepare them to be prepared for the unknowable. So teaching and learning. We learned some things from the pandemic in terms of teaching and learning. And one of the things that we learned very quickly is students who learn are students who are engaged in their learning. There are all kinds of reports from teachers who would say, well, I saw their face on the screen when I took attendance, and then I didn't see their face for a while. And other times they would be fully engaged and they would learn. And what the research has shown following the pandemic and all the isolation is that the kids that were very fully engaged in their learning did better. They actually learned, they learned new information, and they made progress. And so that's going to be something that's going to have to be a focus in education going forward. It's going to have to be kids engaged in their learning, families and students engaged in the planning of their learning, much more personalized learning, taking into account a student's academic ability, their interests, their needs, their pace. All of that should be personalized to each student so that we are absolutely making sure, promising, for the first time in the history of education, promising that every child will reach his or her potential. And that does mean personalization, and it means engaging them in real-life experiences, in problem solving, in project-based learning, in working on solving problems that are local. What happens when you have one of two bridges on an island that doesn't work? Okay, let's have a group of kids work on that. There are all kinds of examples of students who've worked on local problems and have brought great solutions to them. So that's the kind of thing. It will be less rote learning. Education won't be done to students. They'll be involved and engaged in real-world, authentic learning that is of interest to them, that's dynamic, and that teaches them to think. It just can't be about memorization and rote learning, and even assessment is going to have to change. We learned another thing from the pandemic is that gauging kids' progress isn't so easy when you have students operating with some autonomy. And so that is going to have to also be something we look at. We just aren't going to be able to have any gaps in education. It's just when kids go home from school with projects and work at home, it's just simply not going to be the same. So the work that students do is going to be quite different. So finally, with students, the curriculum is going to be the same in terms of we're still going to focus on proficiency in all the core areas, but also proficiency in the arts. I think we've learned how important the arts are over the last few years as school districts have been cut dramatically and financially over the last 10 or 15 years at least. We even started before that. The arts have been cut, and for so many kids, that's their need, that's their passion, that's their love, and so we need to do that for our society and for our students. And also, and this has been made more and more evident with the pandemic, the need for social emotional learning and the need for empathy and developing relationships. What we're reading is the research that's coming out about social media. The whole issue of technology with our kids is an issue that's going to have huge focus, because we not only need them to be able to work with the things, but they need to be able to communicate remotely. You know, it's much different, and those of you that have had remote work know this, it's much different to communicate remotely. And it's much different to develop relationships when you haven't been together. When you think about our little first and second graders who've not been in a regular experienced classroom for over 18 months, those children have had a whole different experience in developing relationships. And we need to teach students how to navigate the media. The research out of Instagram and Facebook recently has been pretty stirring, and TikTok, in the impact on their self-esteem and their self-worth. And we have to teach kids how to navigate that and maintain their own mental health and their own emotional health. So the curriculum is going to have to expand to empathy, to social emotional learning, to taking care of your health, to navigating the world of technology in every aspect that it is. So let me, and the other piece of that I would offer is we're sending our kids into an extremely multicultural workplace. And whatever their day-to-day contacts are, when they get into colleges and workplaces, it's very diverse. And so their cultural connectivity, their cultural awareness is going to be very important. So that's going to have to be a big part of what we do with students. Let me talk a little bit about educators. This has been an interesting change over the last few years, and I'm happy to hear that one of our teachers here is a coach. Teaching was always a very autonomous job. Teachers pretty much were left to go into their classrooms and teach by themselves. And it was a lonely position in lots of ways, and certainly lonely for administrators and lonely for central office administrators. And what's happened over the last few years is a greater need for collaboration. And so what we're going to see is teachers working together and planning for instruction, becoming adept and proficient in their areas of the curriculum, planning to deliver curriculum, assessing student progress, determining what they need. If I'm a teacher and I have a curriculum area that I'm not very comfortable in, I need some professional learning in that. And it might be from a teacher down the hall, or it might be from an expert outside the district, but I'm going to learn what I need to learn to help my kids succeed. And so the two ways to do that, primarily for teachers to learn from each other, one is through coaching, which is a very highly researched and very effective way of doing it, with teachers coaching teachers. Teachers have an amazing amount of information. They know so much, and when they begin to share it, their workload gets easier, their stress level goes down, and the student achievement goes up. The other piece of it that's really important is collaborative inquiry. And the more teachers work in collaborative inquiry, the more kids will succeed and its student achievement will increase. And in a cycle of collaborative inquiry, teachers plan a lesson, teach it, talk about how it went, who learned, who didn't learn, how did we assess it, what would I do differently next time, and what do I need to go back and reteach, and learning from each other and learning from what they've done, but through discussion and through that kind of inquiry is just much more effective than teachers working and living alone and feeling so isolated in their classrooms. Leadership has changed as well. You know, for so long, leaders were seen as managers and, you know, make sure that the building's warm and the buses are running on time. And our leadership is changing to a much more academic leadership and leading student achievement, supporting teaching and learning. And that includes that administrators and leaders, teacher leaders, are comfortable with cultural competency, with their areas of the curriculum, with empathy and showing caring. It's the old, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, is really, really important. And so the whole issue of leadership has changed. It now is the leader, it was always a triangle with the leader at the top, and now it's more of a triangle with the leader at the bottom holding up the organization. And with a focus on teacher leadership, Suzanne and I both work a lot with teacher leaders at Oakland University, and leading from the middle, letting teachers take a role in the leadership, in the decision making, in the planning for professional learning is extremely important, and the research on it is very, very strong, that's what makes a strong organization, and that's what increases student achievement. So so the whole issue of leadership really changes, and it begins and ends with caring. So education is not going to be the same going forward, and so when kids go home, their homework is going to look different, their conversations around the dinner table are going to look different, and the last part of this is culture in a community. Is that the right one? Okay. Is culture, because when you reculture a community, you have to be sure, and this is kind of new too, everybody in the community, everybody in this room, everybody in the school community, and everybody watching this is a learner. And what's happened in the past often is I think we've left some people behind, and we've gotten ahead of some people. The school district will say, well, let's do this because it's good for kids, but we didn't tell parents why we were doing it, or we didn't tell the community, and so people would say, wait, you know, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. In the new paradigm of culture, it's a culture of caring, it's a culture of respect for multicultural situations, and it's a culture where everybody learns and moves together. So we're hoping that parents will teach kids, kids will teach parents, teachers will teach kids, administrators will teach kids. It's an everybody's a learner culture, and that is going to make a huge difference. We won't get ahead of each other. People will be allowed to come along and participate as they can and as they need to. The whole issue of everybody being a learner just jumpstarts the whole district and being able to do that, and that takes into account innovations and change, because in the past, change has been very difficult for organizations like schools. People didn't want schools to change. Everybody liked school the way it was when they went through it, and now we're learning that innovations are okay, change is good, but it's never easy. And so as we leave the past behind, we need to be excited about the future, and the only way to do that is to be a part of it and a part of the planning. And so that really is going to change, that changes the whole feel of a district and of a particular school. So with that being said, it's not an event, it's a journey, and it's something that we're all in together. And I wanted to end by saying the future is in our hands right now. Their world, the world that the students are going to walk into, is in the hands of the people who are in this room and who watch this. We can't let them down. And so join us as we move forward. This is going to be an exciting project. The school district hopefully will look a little different in a year, maybe very different in a couple of years, but it's going to be a collaborative project that moves forward with kids at the helm. So thank you for your time, and the PowerPoint will be probably on the website, and it will be given to the committee. So thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. Brian Weber with Plant Moran Cressa, as Val introduced before. Going to give a quick introduction of who we are as Plant Moran Cressa, and then also the services we'll be providing along Kay's team as this process goes through and the services we'll be offering. So who is Plant Moran Cressa? A lot of you may know Plant Moran as the tax audit company. We are a consulting arm of Plant Moran, made up of about 80 professionals in the construction and real estate industry. We do over about $2 billion a year of program management. In the last 5 years, we've also done about $1.5 billion in just K-12 capital planning and then as well as implementation. So who we are, it's essentially we are a consultant that the districts can lean on. You guys have everyday lives as educators. We come in, all our life is the construction. We know K-12, we know the industry. So we're basically a team member that you can lean on that knows what's going on in the industry and can be leaned on as counsel to work through all the processes. So that's what we're offering for this along the way. And then a little bit of what is owner's representation. Through the process, there will be multiple team members added, vendors added. But to look at us, it would be an extension of your staff. If you look there, throughout the process, we would have contractors, architects, engineers, other members. But in this step, we would be your extension. And the good thing is where we provide the best value is getting early in the process. And if you do look in this, the first thing you see, we're in strategic planning at the orange bubble there. The first thing listed is strategic planning. So we are brought on board at the right time now to provide the best service and value to the community. A little bit more showing of our reach in the state. We do work with 30 of the top 50 districts in Michigan. So our reach is ever growing right now. It is a lot of bonds being sold right now, a lot of districts doing a lot of capital improvements. So we are talking to a lot of your neighbors. We are seeing a lot of trends across the state and locally in the area. As far as specific to this program right now for the capital planning and strategic planning process, I just want to talk through a couple of services we'll be offering, coinciding with everything else going along. Strategic planning, and I'll go through a lot of these here, but student demographic analysis, site and facility feasibility studies, current facility use and condition assessments, space programming and cost estimating, real estate planning and analysis, financial modeling strategies, and then, if necessary, review bond issue and millage opportunities. So the first step, enrollment projections and demographics. Obviously, very important to understand what the trends are for populations and communities. We are seeing statewide, and also here's a snapshot of Wayne County, of trends of 5-year projections of where student enrollments are based on birth rates, where students are moving to, whether it's out of state or if they're in-home schooling. So Vail had reached out to try and get a little more specific data, and we hesitated a little bit. We want to keep this initial introduction as a higher level data. So the snapshot you show is Wayne County, and as you can see, it's a steady decline for the last 20 years here. So throughout the process, as we get involved more, we'll be able to run more detailed reports, not only for Grosse Ile, but downriver areas, surrounding neighborhoods, or neighboring communities to understand what's going on with them as well. So plenty of data available. I did have some available today, and it turned into a 4-page report that I didn't want to squeeze into an introduction. So it'll be there in future meetings. We will dive deep on that. It's a longer presentation, but that's some of the data we'll be able to offer and understand where the forecasts are for this area and local areas. So the other one is facility utilization and facilitation studies. So this process, essentially, we walk through buildings, talk to staff, leadership, understand current occupancies of classrooms, how you're using it, what the programs are, how the teaching is taking place in your district. From there, we will run reports, give feedback, and then also provide analysis, different scenarios of if you were to do this at whatever ratio of students you want, call it 20 per class, 30 per class, and you can compare what that would look like from how much square foot do you need, how many facilities do you need, what are you currently running with, and obviously efficiency is a key, but also making sure that you have the right ratio to be able to conduct education way that the community would like to. So that's one of the steps throughout the process we'll be offering. Capital assessment. So this is one process we actually have right now going on. We literally walk through all your facilities. A couple members of our team have already working on it, but whether it's construction manager, architect, engineers, we get everybody involved from our group. Understand condition of the facilities. Is it HVAC systems that are in need of help, electrical systems, roofing, finishes? Top to bottom, we look at everything, come back with an assessment. Very detailed reports are offered. Understanding what may be a critical need, a deferred improvement, or anything that we need to categorize or put to a priority of your choosing. Within that model as well, a big step of that right now, in whether you've heard about the construction industry or not, it is very volatile right now. We do a cost escalation for that. You're not getting everything done in the next 1 or 2 years. Could be over 3, 4, 5, 6 years. So we'll put escalation factors in there to try to understand what real cost would be in the years to come, that when these projects may or may not hit. The last one we're going to talk about today is the real estate planning and analysis. This is more of a 20, 30, 40-year look ahead. It is, once we get through the buildings, we understand how you're using them, what condition they're in. We decide, or not decide, at least understand where that's at. In addition to that, what type of properties do you own? Is it too much, not enough? Is it something where, whether you utilize it with new school facilities, or is it something as a community benefit more to whether sell off or develop as a different use? We've done that with plenty of districts around the area, so it coincides with the facility assessments and understands what the long-term goals and successes would be for the community for any property that you may own. That, in high level, is Plant Marin Cressa and what we help them out with in the process.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Brian, for setting the stage. Thank you, Kay, for giving us a sense of, if we had a crystal ball and we look nationwide at some trends, what impact might there be here on Grosse Ile? My name's Suzanne Klein, and I'm going to help with our wonderful panel zero in on some of the questions that will be informing the planning work that's about to begin. Just a little piece of quick background. Kay Cornell, who you've already met, is a former educator, worked in Oakland County, assistant superintendent, curriculum and instruction, and has led strategic planning, dynamic planning programs, as well as facilitated them in a number of districts in southeastern Michigan. And my background, for those of you that, and I know a couple people in the audience tonight, it's nice to see old friends and acquaintances. I'm a former teacher. I was a special ed teacher for quite a long time. I had the opportunity to be a middle school assistant principal and principal, which was a wonderful job. I had the opportunity then to be a special ed director, an assistant superintendent, and deputy superintendent. Yes, I started when I was 5 years old, because then I was the superintendent of schools in Grosse Pointe Public Schools for 14 and a half years before I retired. And the wonderful part about doing the work with children, with teachers, with communities, and schools is that you have an opportunity to help shape the future and be intimately involved in the success of other people's children, as you are hoping people will be with your own. So that's a little bit about just who is going to be helping facilitate this conversation with the community, which is a multiple day event you'll hear a little bit more about. But tonight, I really appreciate the opportunity for some of the folks that are your local representatives here as residents, as business people, healthcare, teachers, graduate, to help us reflect and really put into view the kinds of things to be thinking about as we move forward, think together, and plan. So what I'm going to do is pivot around just a little bit so I can see you. And ask a few questions. The questions are designed really to help us consider from a variety of points of view, as a parent, as a community member, as a teacher, as a former student, the kinds of things to keep in mind as this planning process begins. Because it doesn't start in a vacuum, it builds on the success of this school district, it builds on the tradition, it builds on the strong desires, goals, hopes, plans, dreams that parents and community people have for their children. And those are the kinds of things that we're going to start to tease out in the conversation this evening and then build on as the team gets assembled and then other data is shared, thinking carefully together about what the data suggests that Grosse-Ile has in terms of its tradition of excellence, the kinds of things that you aspire to, and how those things might be woven into a plan that will be a roadmap for the future. So let me start with this question. And again, I mentioned to many of the panel that I met on the way in the door, not everyone is going to answer every question unless you choose to, by the way. So I'm going to ask some questions, and then as you are ready to respond, please pop your mask off and give us your best thinking on that. And as others want to jump in, that's fine. Some of the questions will fit nicely for multiple folks. Others are going to be more specific, as you know. They've received the questions in advance, by the way, so they've had some time to think a bit about it. So let's begin with this. Based on your experience and in your line of work, what must the successful workforce as well as citizen of the future know or be able to do? As you think about that as a context, how have things changed in your workplace? And then as you look ahead, what might that citizen and workforce person know and be able to do? Who'd like to start us off? Don't be shy.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, so my thoughts on that is what I'm seeing in our workplace. And we're not a technology company, we're a bank. I work in the tax department, so Microsoft Word and Excel are about as complicated as we've been historically, and we're really moving well beyond that. In the same way we had to learn those programs 20 plus years ago,
Sure.
We're really having to learn new data management tools, and we're increasingly turning to the people that are 1 and 2 years out of college to provide that knowledge, because the rest of us don't have it. And so, the earlier we can get people going on data management skills, I think it's going to be the, I don't mean to steal the thunder from the IT guy, but I think
He will probably underscore some of the things.
yeah,
you
that's
just
right. I
shared.
mean, I think that's as big as anything. But I do think we have to bifurcate it, right? So I'm answering with respect to my workplace and similar sorts of workplaces, but. We have to realize that our students aren't all going into a corporate workplace, and if everything's focused on the skills that it takes for that, then we're going to leave some kids out and feel like they're not being taught to. And the critical part for me is figuring out how to reach the right kids with the right things, right? If you're teaching people skills they'll never use, then you're kind of wasting education time. And really frustrating them. And so how do you kind of bifurcate if that's what's necessary, or leave the options open at least? Because I think life skills for those who aren't going on to college in particular are critical. And how do we teach those? I mean, I've got 8 or 9 years of college experience, and I'm still baffled by things like healthcare forms. And things like that. And I think, how does somebody who has a high school diploma and hasn't dealt with those things on a regular basis, how do they confront those things? So those are my thoughts as I think about that question.
And you made me think there are times when you're going to answer with your vocational hat on, with your parent hat, a resident hat. Put on whatever hat you need to for this. Amanda, looks like you're ready to jump in, please.
I'm thinking about a few different things, but when everyone thinks about healthcare, they automatically gravitate towards traditional nurse, doctor, therapist, which are heavy science. You're going to school for that. You have a very solid education. But I think to be successful, we have to start at a young age teaching kids how to be adaptable. And some of this was brought up in the introductions. They have to be able to critically think. you're working in a team, you're working by yourself, and you have to be motivated. I think you have to have a passion for what you're doing, because if you don't want to do that, you're not going to be successful. It's just going to be, I come in, I do my job, and I leave. I echo the fact that we in a hospital have probably one of the most diverse groups from an education perspective, because you do have high school graduates all the way through doctorate level performing very, very critical roles at every one of those stages, and we need to make sure that our graduates are successfully able to adapt into that. And I would say my last point is communication and how vital it is. I think it's challenging. People haven't been face to face. Now we're, only comfortable texting, and I don't even want to talk to somebody on the phone. But things are much easier when you have a quick 5-minute conversation versus an email that's so long that you don't even want to read through it. So we really need to work on a lot of these just key skills to be successful. And I don't think that's all particular to healthcare. I think it's just, in the workplace.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I'll add to what Jay and Amanda said as well, right? I had adaptability as well, and first and foremost, the kids need to learn how to learn. I didn't learn how to learn until after I was high school, and so I have a lot of regrets about that. But if you think about adaptability, how fast markets, industries, customer expectations are changing so quick, and I worked in telehealth the prior 2 years, so it was a nice kind of cush job, and then COVID hit, and that stuff just changed overnight, right? Customer expectations changed, adoption changed, and to one of the earlier speakers, I work in a job that didn't exist 10, 15 years ago, right? I'm working on cloud computing now. That didn't exist 10 years ago. And when these kids get out of middle school, it's going to be the expectation, right? And, data analysis and statistical analysis are effectively table stakes to critical thinking in the future, right? So table stakes is kind of a marketing term, right? If you buy a table, you expect it to have legs, right? So, it's absolutely crucial.
Thank you. Emily?
You guys said exactly what I was going to say, so thank you. I would say one big thing that I've learned as I get older, I'm now 21 years out of high school, it's learning to give up your ego and allow others to do things that will do it better than you. So social media has evolved over the last 10, 20 years, but in the last couple years, it's even gone quicker than those decades combined, right? So for me, being able to say I can't manage this, I need to get a kid fresh out of college, you manage social media now, and you'll do it 1,000,000 times better. So being able to adapt is one of the biggest things. Communicate, empathy, and listening, I think, is one of the biggest things as well. But being able to put your guard down and let others take something on for you, and they can do it better, is probably one of the biggest things I've learned.
Thank you. Is there someone else that wants to comment? Please.
I do want to echo adaptability, and my spouse is in the gig economy, as is many of our friends. We're all in our 50s and early 60s, and they're at the top of their field. They could be engineers, they could be masters in communication, and these jobs now are by the job. So you're providing your own health insurance, you're providing, you're choosing your own retirement plans and how you're going to invest and things like that. And so you have to be able to critically think, you have to be motivated, you have to be able to advocate for yourself, you have to have excellent communication skills, know all the Google programs, because those jobs, if they come with a DocuSign or you have to open something to see where the availability is, and you can't do it fast enough, someone else gets it. And so, and it's so many fields now like that, and I think it's probably going to just become more that way.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll just add that I now teach at Oakland University in the department that prepares people that want to be central office leaders, assistant superintendents, curriculum consultants, superintendents, as well as periodically teaching the principal preparation program. And even what we've learned about how children learn and how we can more effectively teach them has been grounded in what we already knew, but there have been a lot of things to learn. Not just because of COVID, but just because we have learned more. And as you lead learning from whatever chair that is, whether it's across the table with a child of your own, or in a classroom, or in a Board of Education position, or here in the central office, making sure that you're looking ahead, as a number of our speakers have said, in terms of what the workplace is going to require is key. Let's move on to the next question, which comes right here to Grosse Ile, and it's looking at the pre-K 12 school experience. You've kind of spoken to this a little bit, but let's zero in on it. What kinds of things are going to really maximize the likelihood that your graduates will be successful as they step into the future that you've talked about? Who'd like to start that off for us? Please.
I think kind of piggybacking on what we discussed in the introduction, first and foremost focusing on SEL and the whole child. Thankfully, we've kind of already started that within the last, couple years, but also finding those opportunities to tap into student interest and passion, whether that is electives at the high school level or our course offerings, being flexible with our courses, and maybe even the methods in which we're teaching them. And then also even at the lower L, offering just choices with our kids and, how we're teaching, what we're teaching, how they're learning, where they're learning, to really try to increase engagement. And we know that choice is a huge engagement for young children and all children. So whether that's, again, their classes or how they're learning, I think would be really beneficial.
Thank you. Anyone else, please?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to this, but when it comes back to adaptability, I think it's about resilience.
Mm-hmm.
I had the privilege of attending the Naval Academy. I had a roommate there during plebe summer, perfect score in his SAT, had like a 4.6 GPA, 6'4", looked like a model, varsity athlete, and he lasted 2 weeks because he had never dealt with failure.
Yeah.
And part of what they teach there is you have to learn to live with failure and move on, and actually, in corporate world, it's embraced, right? You failed, you learned something, right? So teaching kids, it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to fail, pick yourself back up, be resilient, move on, because this is how life is going to be.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree, Marty. That's the story of my life is that. But I'm the only one up here not taking notes. I have a pencil and not a paper. That sums up my education at Grosse Ile. Like, I was on this stage. I had the most joy on this stage and being the football manager and being in Laura Mack's class and hands-on experiences. I wasn't taking notes. The notes I took, I never looked at. I just wrote. I couldn't read my handwriting anyway. But not every kid learns the same. And like you said, Kristen, being able to adapt and give them choices and see where they are good at something and following through on that and letting them go that route is only going to help. And then that brings up communication between teachers and administrators between, I don't know how the schools are split up now, K-1. All I remember is East River Elementary. But yeah, between talking about your students, it's and maybe passing on the info as they go to middle school and then they go to high school. Like, this is how this kid learns. I have no clue if that's legal or possible, but it is. It would be a helpful way for students to learn and thrive.
I'm super glad that you brought up all those opportunities that you had that were outside of a traditional classroom. And I think that, I heard the word adaptable a lot at the beginning, which I completely agree with. And then it feels like we're kind of talking about the qualities that help a person be adaptable. Mm-hmm. Grit, being able to handle failure, being a critical thinker and advocating for themselves and so on. And so I think that whether it be in the non-traditional classes or the traditional classes, we have to think about, in a thoughtful, graduated way, adding, one thing a year or two things a year, how do we teach these qualities, whether it be in theater or math, so that they can, follow whatever passion they have, whether it be, automotive repair or, a CEO of something, it doesn't matter. It matters if they're compassionate, if they're an investigative thinker, if they're self-motivated. That's what matters. That will make them successful in their field of choice.
Thank you. What I'm hearing again is that whole notion of personalizing, and I'm hearing the panel talk about making sure that the educational process and experiences here have an opportunity to help certainly be aware of the knowledge that is going to be important, the skills that might be useful, but also develop the dispositions, the grit, the resilience, the ability to work hard, work as a team, that those are very important components. So with that in mind, panel, let me ask you to think ahead with me If you were designing a school or a school district from scratch based on the kinds of things that you're thinking and hearing from others, what would be some of the major components you would want to make sure the district addressed, that the school would contain for every child that walked through the door each day? Who wants to start us out with that, please?
I love this question. Okay, so I only thought about it from a high school point of view because I didn't want to tread on what I didn't know about. But so I'm thinking of high school. I thought, oh my God, wouldn't it be great? Because I'm thinking of these general qualities that we're talking about that can be taught in a variety of settings. But if we had a one semester elective in freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, and a full year elective as a senior, and say, I'm just saying for imagination's sake, in the freshman year of the semester, the focus is safety. They talk about internet safety, body safety, driving safety, all the things that keep a student safe. And then maybe in year 2, it's all about how do you organize yourself and build study skills. How do you keep a calendar? How do you do professional emails? How often should you check your email? Mental habits for success, like when you first get home from school, do you do your homework? You should do it at the very same time every day. Make it become a habit. How do you build those habits of mind? Maybe you get to your junior year and your elective is about communication and self-advocacy. You begin to become responsible for contacting the teacher if there's a problem, maybe rather than your parent, and then involving the parent if need be further down the line. Maybe you start to become responsible for making school contacts about your attendance, and you practice self-advocacy in that way. And then when you're a senior, I think it would be a great idea to have a full year class that where you do college applications in the fall, you do a tuition cost analysis. I've read so many college application letters and it's all about dream school, but I think it'd be interesting to bring in a cost analysis. Then you're learning a little bit of personal finance. You're still working on your organizational skills. You're learning all the Google software. You're being responsible and checking your email. You're keeping a calendar. You're doing time management. And then maybe in the spring of that year, you do a volunteer project in the community so you can practice leadership and you work in groups that way. If you had that experience as a senior, you would walk into university and thrive. I know my niece just finished up at U of M and they actually had a class for those honors students in their freshman year that taught them all that stuff. What if you walked in with it? And then if you're not going to go to college, you'd walk right into that gig economy and you'd be able to, function in it. So that's my thinking.
Thank you. Obviously, you gave that a lot of thought, which we appreciate.
Wow.
But that's what this is about. It's for people to think and plan and then make real the kind of decisions that this team is going to be recommending to the Board of Education. Others of you that might want to jump in. Okay, I see another mask or two coming up.
Is there anybody else?
Yeah,
Oh, you-
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's the sort of thinking that is necessary, right? To step back and instead of saying, okay, it's going to be 6 hours and this is what it is and it's going to be the same size classes and all that sort of thing. Some of those things could be smaller groups, they could be bigger groups, they could be, it could be organized in a way where it's, it's thinking about what are the skills that everybody in this school should have when they walk out, and they should all be taking those classes. And if they take them as cohorts in the same year, I think it's even better because then they're going to be experiencing that as a group together. So, things like that, I think, are exactly right. Whether it's exactly those in those years, I think it'd be figured out later. But that was kind of one of my thoughts, is to kind of step back and instead of saying, okay, it's 6 hours and you take a math, a science, and that sort of thing, it's stepping there. And then I think it's a lot of the only note I wrote down was kind of data-driven decision-making.
Thank you.
There are, we may have problems with the tests that are out there. We may, say this one's not as good as that one and that sort of thing. But there is data out there, and we ought to be using it all the time to make decisions on where we focus our resources and what we're doing right and what we're not doing right. And as long as everything goes back to that, and we can get better and better at the data analysis, but our decisions should be based on that.
Action research to help make decisions. Please, jump in.
So a couple of things that kind of kept coming to mind when I was reading this question, which is definitely pie in the sky, were flexibility and alignment. I think those two pieces in terms of our relationships and our facilities and our curriculum are very crucial. Flexibility in kind of some of the things that we were talking about with adaptability in our offerings, what opportunities we are giving to our students, what opportunities they're asking for as our students, because I think that's an important piece as well. Flexibility with our spaces in our buildings, the actual physical space of our buildings, whether it's our classroom or the technical building design. Spaces that may look like future workspaces that we're seeing, at Google or Quicken Loans, or that are not traditional desks and rows as we've seen. Facilities and courses that adapt with us, I think. In terms of alignment, I think it's really crucial that, K-5 for sure, elementary, but even K-12 alignment in terms of data-driven decision-making and using our data to make sure that all of our students are growing no matter where they're starting with us, and that we're accelerating their growth and we're reaching them where they are. And then I think with that, making sure that we have the systems in place in order to do that. Do we have the resources? Do we have the people? Do we have to be creative with funding to get those people, or within ourselves as educators? But making sure that we have those systems in place of support to do what the data is telling us.
And as you're speaking, it's part of taking time, stepping back, looking at data, looking at what is happening right now, understanding where opportunities are, designing based on your beliefs and the principles that you hold most dear, along with the treasure that you have to put toward that. But then also saying, how do we get there over time? What does that look like? Somebody else is ready to jump in. Emily,
Yeah.
go for it.
No, I was excited what Laura Mack was talking about, and then if we look at our friend circles, and even some of us who have gone to school, either dropped out or taken a hiatus for 20 years, how many career changes have we had? How many different times have we gone back to school to try something else? What if we shifted a lot of that into the K-12 setting? So you're exposed to different things early on, right? So they ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? That's like the worst question ever, who knows, right? It could change in a flash. So learning about electrician or trade school as a sophomore or junior. At my company, I'm right next to a university prep in Detroit, and I had a student come to me in person and say, hey, I want to design sneakers for my career, and one of the programs I have at my office is we send running shoes out to people with CF all over the country. So they have to, at the school, get a full semester working for free at something they're interested in. So we had this kid work with us at Rock CF for a whole semester, and he learned that experience of do I want to do this? Maybe working with us helped shape his future on what he definitely wants to do or not want to do, or he was exposed to something interesting. So bringing careers and different options into the school setting at a younger age, I think is going to save people money and help them decide what they want to do maybe a little sooner.
And what I've also heard several of you say, it's also giving students a chance to go out into the world with internships or other kinds of project opportunities to explore and come up with solutions. A wonderful piece that I remember reading about and being very impressed was engineers that were working on aerospace going into kindergartens regularly, talking with children about how they might fly. And it wasn't, I'm going to stand and flap my hands, but it was, what kind of machine would you need to design? And it was a very interesting imagination experience for the children, but the engineers walked away with some interesting concepts that they didn't have on their drawing board quite yet. So there can be learning going both ways. The next, I'm sorry, we can add
Can
one
I
more
just
thing?
add one thing? I think that building a set of personal skills, the things we've mentioned, grit, flexibility, all that, that will help students, I believe, with their mental health as well. We live in an unpredictable world before the pandemic, and it's really unpredictable now, but having a sense of agency and knowing what your core skills are. So say you're not the valedictorian, but you have this core set of skills and you have this sense of agency, I think that would help with mental health as well.
You introduced an interesting word into the conversation. One of the things that we talk about in the leadership programs and in our teacher education programs at Oakland University is helping develop not only a sense of agency, but a sense of efficacy. And you've talked about that with different words. A sense of efficacy means, I think I can. I know I can. And maybe I have a sense of collective efficacy with a team. We can. But the agency piece is powerful because not only can we, but we're saying we will. Here we go. Come with. Here's what it's going to look like. Some of those skills are developed in the classroom. They're out in the community. And our next question suggests that they might be also outside the school day. And you've wandered there in some of your other responses. Is there anything that you want to add to the conversation at this point about those out-of-school or after-school activities that strengthen that development, the knowledge, skills, and dispositions? Anything you want to highlight with yellow highlighter and bring back into the conversation? Emily's ready.
Yeah, that sparked an interest. So I know too many of my friends and myself that failed tests and were horrible at writing and didn't do good, and that weighs on your self-esteem and mental health, like you said, Laura. But if you can find that one outlet where you are good at something, it builds self-esteem and it builds your just outlook on life and your excitement to learn. So having various options out of the classroom, in the classroom, on the stage, in the art room, all these different options really can help in the long run, I think.
Can I add on that? And I think some of it is about setting the expectation, and it's interesting because just as an observer watching, you see school districts that are so proud, X amount of kids are going to college, 98% college rate. But is that really the goal? Like, do we want 98% of the kids going to college when that may not be the end game? Or now we have a lot of debt and they're not, even in a field that they were trying to go to school for. There's so many ways that you could measure success at the end, but you're setting it up to say that they're failing because they're not going to college. So I think that's just an important piece. Like, you're setting the tone for that everyone has to go to college to be successful and get this score on the SAT and where they're going, but that's not always, a definition of success. It can be for a lot of people, but that isn't the case for everyone.
So what you're suggesting is in the data dive, in the data analysis, that you look at multiple measures of success in terms of what that might look like for large groups of kids, smaller groups of kids, and in different types of careers. Okay, oops, another mask is off, please.
Yeah, I just think too, to remember that what we do offer is relevant, and I know we've kind of already said that, but relevant with our offerings and to look at the whole child and what they need. But also as a small district, and this may not be a popular opinion, but to make sure that we don't oversaturate the pool also, that what we are offering is what kids are interested in, and it's not just there because it's been there for 15 years and we want to keep it there. We need to be relevant with what our students are going to need in the future and what they're interested in now.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I could, I'd be remiss as the president of the Athletic Boosters for not mentioning sports. And it's not just sports though. It's theater, it's band, it's volunteering. I mean, these are the things that, when I'm looking at resumes, those are the things that I'm looking for. The grade point is interesting, the work experience is interesting, but what do they do outside of it that shows that they're involved in the community, especially at a younger age? And it's the same things, having gone through it with applications with my kids for college, those are the things that they're looking for. And if you think about it, it's not just, we shouldn't be doing it because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for it because it's important. And we talk about learning to lose and pick yourself back up. I mean, those things are where you learn that stuff.
Absolutely. Please.
Yeah, I was going to add to that as well. Learning in a team dynamic, super crucial, especially in a corporate world where most of us are working from home and you have to build relationships really quick and you have to learn to sort of negotiate and give and take, and you may have the right answer, but the rest of the team isn't there. Really important. And I think of some sort of tactical examples of, hey, there's schools that do coding competitions, right? There's schools that do, I did Future Business Leaders of America when I was in high school, right? I worked at an employer where we brought kids in between their junior and senior year to work on projects
Wonderful.
for us over the summer, right? And, Steve Jobs has this great quote about and I don't want to butcher it, right? Like perspective is worth 20 IQ points, right? So anything we can do for these kids to gain their perspective, because maybe they think they want, like I thought I wanted to be a dentist, right? Started reading books, I'm like, this is kind of boring, right? And you put it on the shelf and move on to something else.
What I hear you saying, it's not either or, in school, out of school, it's both and.
For
And
sure.
it's looking across a variety of experiences, so those children and young adults can start to get a sense of what they're good at, what they're interested in, because you want them to become an educated person.
I think job shadowing is super important because if you're interested in science, that means you love to study science and learn about it, but that doesn't necessarily mean you like the 9 to 5 of being in a hospital or whatever particular job you get. And, you know, how we study something and how we practice it are two different things. And so I think job shadowing is an important part.
Again, it's about options to understand where those talent skills might take you. You're already starting to answer the next question. You've been very facile in your thinking, and your responses have been quite wonderful. I want to ask you question 5, though, just in case there's something else. Is there something else that Grosse Ile students need to help be prepared for success? You've talked about knowledge, skills, dispositions. Is there something else that you want to make sure gets on the table and out into the community conversation? Emily, you're ready to go.
I think Grosse Ile was a great place to be born and raised, but there's a bigger world off the island. And luckily, I was exposed to that very young by going for treatment at Children's Hospital and going to a big city and seeing a lot of people and interacting with a lot of people. My parents were both teachers, and they taught me how to talk to people and respect people. So I think diversity, inclusion, acceptance, that is a huge component, and I see it in a lot of districts. I don't know how present it is in Grosse Ile. All I know is people that were kind of the outsiders or the others from Grosse Ile all moved away as fast as possible. That's not to say anything bad about Grosse Ile, but it's kind of the vibe that we got. So let's change that a little bit, because the world is ever-changing, and acceptance and inclusion has to be at the forefront for a successful world.
Thank you. Please.
Yeah, I had a similar note, actually, that, it's a unique community, right? We're very, we're isolated both by, bridges, but also just, we're different. And some of that leads to us not really kind of appreciating what else is out there. And so, I know when I went to college even, it was eye-opening just talking to people who had been in more diverse, situations and learning about those things, and, kind of opening my eyes to the fact that there are people that are different and think differently, and they're not just on the news. But having said that, I think that that uniqueness also, there's a sense of community that we need to build on, and that sense of community kind of translates to the workforce and other communities where we live, or things that we're involved in where there's a sense of responsibility and that sort of thing that I think is important, that that we need to capitalize on.
Thank you. All righty. This is going to be a different look, and it's asking you to think a bit about what's happened here in the district over the last decade. And as you look back and you look at where you are now, and then you're looking forward into the future at the same time, is there anything that you would like to share from your perspective, either from your work life, from your children's experience, from your own community experience, that would be helpful for the district to keep in mind as it anticipates and prepares for the future? Please.
I think one thing that's right in the forefront is COVID. So we saw what we had to do and change, right? Technology, it was just in our faces. And I know from the school district's perspective, how do you flip from all in person to being all remote in such a short amount of time? I mean, we hope that we don't ever have to, be fully remote again, but you don't know what that might look like. And to be prepared, and how may we change things so that it's different for the child that's at home? What kind of support do they have? There's so many things that can flip in an instant. I don't think that we were prepared for that. And I think we need to do much more preparation for those unanticipated events that could happen.
Some scenario planning is what I hear you talking about. Anything else that you'd like to add in response to that question about anticipating, thinking about the future?
I can speak from the elementary level. Some of the things that we have done and have added, that was kind of how I read the question, so I apologize if that was wrong. We have added some STEAM classes and some robotics and Lego, which is kind of introducing engineering thinking in our elementaries. One of the biggest things that I think I'm very proud of, which kind of goes back to Emily's comment about other people, is our new social emotional learning platform for Positivity Project, which deals with other people matter and teaching some of those skills of empathy and teamwork and collaboration at the K-5 levels, which is really exciting. And then I just think the last year and a half has really taught us as educators as a whole, just kind of to prioritize and what prioritize and looking forward of what really is important for our kids, whether it is social emotional or which academics pieces, to really prioritize and hone in on.
Thank you. Please.
Yeah, I think building on the COVID concept, I think, going back to the data analysis, the numbers are out and they're terrible. And it's not just Grosse Ile, it's all of Michigan and probably the rest of the country. And so, we've lost something, our kids have lost something, and we owe it to them to figure out a way to get that back, right? To make it, kind of delayed development instead of lost development. Because, sending them off to college basically a year and a half or a year behind where they should be is, they're all in different places, but wherever they should be, they're, a year behind maybe. And so how do we do that in a way that doesn't mean just, putting them in school for another month, every year or something like that? How can we recapture that? And I don't have an answer to that, but I think it's one of the priorities we have to have over, we may not be able to catch it up in 1 year. It may take 5 years, and so the kids who are juniors, they're not going to make it up, but, our elementary kids, we've got time. We can catch them up somehow.
I'd say the last year and a half or almost 2 now has kind of shined a light on what those with chronic illness go through by missing weeks at a time, months at a time, entire school years. This is not abnormal for somebody with cystic fibrosis or cancer or hemophilia in the chronic disease world. So if anything good is coming out of this, it's how can we take what we've learned in the past year and how to educate patients or students outside of the classroom. How can we use what we've learned in the past year and a half and tailor it towards when students are sick or faced with an illness and they're out of school for weeks and months. So I think it was a learning situation for everybody.
Thank you. The next question builds on the conversation that you've been having together here. When you think about the kinds of hopes, plans, dreams, opportunities, things that need to be different and will be different, what would you hope would be coming out of this process that the Grosse Ile Township schools are undertaking now in terms of developing a strategic plan? And have you heard anything, that you might want to put on the table about what's happening in another district or someplace else in the country that might be of value here? You're ready to go, please.
Yeah, strategic planning is kind of what I do for a living, right? So there's all kinds of frameworks, and you can take those same frameworks and apply them to any sort of situation. So one of my favorite frameworks is, it's called Playing to Win. It's a whole book with Martin and Lafley, one of who was the CEO of Procter & Gamble, another one was sort of this economics professor. And they have this really nice, clean strategy framework. So it's called the Strategy Cascade, and it makes a ton of sense, right? It starts with what's the winning aspiration, how are we going to define success? Then you get into where are we going to play, like what are the things we're going to do, and it explicitly calls out what are the things we're not going to do, because you can't be everything to everybody, end up being nothing to nobody, right? And then you get into, how are we going to win there, right? So if we choose to do certain things, how are we actually going to compete and win there? And then you get into what are the capabilities we need to do that, right? Whether it be technological or from a human capital standpoint, and then you get into the management system. So how do we manage and grow this thing over time? So my biggest recommendation is look at that framework. I've used it in 3 different industries. It works great, it works well, and it helps, and it also scales, right? You can do it at a very high management level all the way down to the individual classroom and student.
A framework is a guiding document that is so important in terms of where are we going, what do we hope to find when we get there, How can we enable success? What does success look like? What's it going to take? How much it's going to cost? Over what period of time? Who's involved? All those things will be part of the planning process, and thank you for that reminder, because that is a key piece. Someone else might want to jump in terms of what you hope comes out of it. Amanda?
A couple things that I've heard of or read about, and you've touched on them, are life skills, right? So we are graduating from high school, but are we prepared to be successful in the real world? I do think a lot of that comes from home, but it has to also be supplemented and then reinforced in the school. So I loved the whole concept of the staging through the years, to gradually build on that. So when I am out of school, I can, financially do a budget for my house. And I know that if I get a credit card, I have to pay it back. And, those student loans, they do add up quick. And what does that look like? So I think that's an important piece. And also, and I'm not sure if this program is in the schools because I haven't heard about it, but really partnering with the businesses that are in the, all of southeastern Michigan. I mean, we have huge corporations that we could be partnering with, exposing students to so many different careers and industries, and I don't think that we do a good job with that. I mean, part of it could be we are somewhat isolated here on the island, but even looking locally, there's tons of opportunities to really be exposing our children, to all of these different careers.
That whole notion of partnerships has come up before, and that connection to what is happening in a variety of businesses and industries, opportunities to have people come in and talk about their career, to go out and be part of a project, life experience. Summer camps are part of those strategies in some districts where they'll have the Lego Logo Robotics, a writing camp, a theater camp, and on and on and on. So again, your imagination and creativity as you create a plan that keeps in mind all children is going to be key. Please.
Yeah, I mean, just building on that concept of partnering with businesses, I think an even easier step is just, and I don't know if it's ever been tried here or anywhere else that people know of, but a mentoring program. I mean, there are people that would be happy, whether they're, in the corporate world, professionals, laborers, whatever it may be, that, can come in and, whether it's one-on-one or 1-on-7 or 8 or whatever that is, and just give a sense for what the job is like and help people kind of make decisions instead of, being just a crapshoot on what their parents are like. A lot of people get access to those things through their parents or through other, community efforts, but some people don't. And they really don't get any kind of guidance in terms of what their options are. And so by having exposure to different people that can help them with, with these things, not so much from a, it can be everything from, kind of emotional support, but, specifically I'm thinking it's more kind of career, guidance that's not, okay, here's what you're going to do, but these are some options that are out there that you can consider. And hey, can I, I see you're probably not interested in what I do, but I can introduce you to somebody who's probably closer to what you're interested in, and
Exactly.
and kind of do those things. I think there are a lot of people on the island that would be interested in volunteering for that sort of thing.
So I've heard not only in these comments, but in others, you've made mentoring, job shadowing, internships, networking with other folks in terms of bringing that outside world in, and then students stepping out into the outside world to take a look. Okay, we're at the last question of the evening, and you have been such a wonderful and thoughtful group. I want to ask you this last one because there might have been something you've been dying to talk about that none of the questions that we created has given you a chance yet to put on the table for the district's consideration and the committee's thoughtful response. So what other advice might you offer to the district to prepare Grosse Ile students for a successful future? Who would like to begin? Thank you.
I was going to say, I think we
Thanks.
said it all.
I quite don't know the answer to this, but our kids are going to be walking into a world where automation and globalization are the standard and not the exception, right?
Yes.
Just think of walking to an Amazon warehouse today, the number of robots that are running around, where 5 years ago that was a person, 10 years ago that was 3 people at Sears, right? And 25 years ago that was a whole manufacturing. It was hundreds of jobs, right? So the prospects are dimming, which is why you're hearing people talk about adaptability, resilience, be flexible, have critical thinking is going to be a much more valuable skill than ever before, because the jobs are dwindling.
Thank you. Others of you that might want to jump in with another piece of advice?
Yeah, after Marty's uplifting comments there, I think it's important that we, the flip side of that is if you're targeting a job that's not going to be there, then it doesn't look good. But as we've said, there will be jobs out there. If not, we all have a bigger problem. The whole world has a bigger problem than this. But being that adaptability that we've been talking about, and kind of realizing that there are kind of core skill sets like communication and empathy and things like that, and being able to adapt and pivot. I think the more we do that, none of that has to do with any. It's not math, it's not science, it's not English. Well, it's maybe English, but a lot of that is just about learning to be a person that can live in this world that's increasingly complicated. Those are the people that are going to find success.
Thank you. Please.
Yeah, and I was just going to say what you probably more eloquently said, but finding that balance between academics and SEL and what we want, wanting our students to leave here as good people, and and to use our data to drive us, but also to find that balance between the life skills, the grit, the growth mindset, moving beyond the classroom and taking that into their lives as well. I'm constantly telling my kids this isn't just a second grade skill, it is a life skill, and finding the ways to instill that within them.
Thank you. Please.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. As someone that hopefully is going to be hiring more staff soon, and that we're getting out of the pandemic, I would much rather hire a person who maybe didn't go to college, who didn't have a 4.0, but they're a great communicator, they have a great personality and a sense of follow-through. That's what I tell kids I know now. I'm like, great, you did great on that test, but can you talk to people? Do you have empathy? Can you write an email that addresses to somebody, says who you are, and then signs off? Not just I'm seeing now people sending emails like texts without a proper intro, and I won't even look at that or read it. So we need basic life skills, but then just a good human, right? And how do we do that? That's what we got to figure out.
Anyone else? What I've heard you say in the course of your very thoughtful comments and in the discussion of others' comments is you're looking at this school district that has a lot to offer its students. And as you look ahead to its future, you're thinking very carefully and urging the district to consider not only the knowledge, but the skills, the behaviors, the dispositions, the social and emotional learning for every child, every day, every classroom, so that all of them are ready to step out into wherever life takes them next with some confidence, some success, some real life experience, and their ability to make some good level-headed types of decisions. Thank you very much for your comments and your thoughtfulness in that. And as I think about bringing the community forum to a close, there's a quote that was something I read as an assistant principal. And when I moved to being a principal, it went into my desk drawer, so I would see it every day. As I went to central office, it was there till I put it in a box when I was leaving at the end of almost 15 years of being the superintendent. It's a quote from a gentleman whose name is Neil Postman, and it's the beginning of a play that he wrote. The message in it is powerful, and I think is one that guides as we think about what happens in schools every day, and then as we look into the future. Mr. Postman said, "Children are a living message that we send to a time we cannot see. We think about that as parents, we think about that in schools, we think about that in communities." So Groseal has a wonderful opportunity now as it thinks about the living message with the context of this conversation, as well as the work of the Strategic Planning Committee that will be getting underway soon. So again, panel, let me thank you, and let me reintroduce my colleague, Kate Cornell, who's going to briefly talk about the strategic planning process before we come to a close.
I can just say, wow, that was absolutely inspiring to sit and listen to. When the pandemic, when we were able to send some kids back and begin to get back to whatever our new normal is, we were all worried that people would go back to just the way things used to be. And listening to you tonight, that's not going to happen in Grosse Ile. It is so exciting to hear this and let this be the beginning of the strategic planning process. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be hard work, I'll warn you, but Suzanne and I promise to make it fun. But it's going to continue to make this district the star that it is. It's always a little harder in a district to do a strategic plan when you're already good, and you are already good. But what I heard tonight is you have all kinds of ideas of how to be even better. So this was a delight to listen to, and I too thank you for your time and your commitment to this wonderful school district. Just switching gears just a little bit for those of you that might be interested in serving in the committee, there will be 4 all-day sessions, all day being 1 in the afternoon to 7 in the evening. And there will be a 5th session that's just a couple of hours. I think I'll turn this over to Val, because she's going to explain how you can give some input and how you can fill out the application. Check the dates, but we strongly encourage you to join us. We'll be having these 4 sessions during which you will have some report in the district as it is, learning what's going on in the district in its current state, and then we'll be looking at the future of education far more deeply than we did tonight. And the committee will determine areas for strategic planning goals, and we'll develop those goals within those 4 sessions. So we hope that you'll join us for those, consider it, and we hope to see you at one of the sessions. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn this over to Val.
Thank you, Kay. Thank you all. Those of us as a part of the district leadership team, I think some of us are like almost emotional at this point. We're so excited to get this work started. Thank you for helping us disrupt this idea of education and what it looks like and what it could look like for Grosse Ile students, and really reach beyond our wildest expectations about where we're headed. Do you guys agree as our team? Like, we're ready to do this work, and thanks for kicking us off. You were a fantastic, fantastic panel, so thank you so very much. Also, I just wanted to mention thank you to the parents that joined us today in the audience. We appreciate you. We appreciate everyone that's live streaming. I hope we can encourage others to watch the live stream. We'll keep it posted. This is really great work, and it's really going to drive a lot of the conversation of the work we're going to do over the next couple months. And it's really important that we get our community involved in this work and understanding and hearing these messages and knowing where we're headed. So if you don't mind, those of you that are here with us tonight, and then those of you that are watching the live stream, we'll keep this live, so even if you watch it in the days to come, you'll still be able to fill this out. But if you could go to this site that's up here on the screen, either go to the link and type the link in your phone, or you can just hold up your camera to the QR code. There is a really short survey that just asks for your feedback about what you heard tonight. We're going to use that feedback as well as we're developing our plan, because not only do we want to hear from our panelists, but we also want to know how it resonates with our parents of the children that we're serving in our school district. So there's the link there. And then the next slide that we have, I'm just going to advance to it real quick here. This is a link and a QR code if you're interested in serving on the strategic planning committee. So we're going to do it the same way we did with the panel, which is just open it up to everyone. It'll be an application process. We're really looking for a diverse group of people to serve on that committee. So if you're interested in doing this work with us, please, please, please apply. And then we'll select individuals from all different walks of life that bring different perspectives and different experiences so that we are building a really well-rounded plan that is going to move this district forward into the future. Share this link with your friends. If you're not a techie person and don't want to do this, my executive assistant, Ms. Robin down there, has hard copies for you. You're welcome just to grab a hard copy, fill out that form, and then submit it to my office. So thank you everyone for being here tonight. Thank you again to our panelists. I think they couldn't have done a better job. So thank you so very, very much, and good night, everyone. We're good, thank you. How do you think? What do you think?
I thought it was good.
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, whatever, I just came here and talked about it.